Philip.
Hello.
Very good to see you. Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to our studio.
Of course. Glad to be here.
Wonderful to have the Jordan Letts here today with the Hospitality and Audit.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Take as much time as you need.
Of course.
Shall we get right into it?
Yes, please.
All right. For my first question, how did you discover the theme of hospitality in The Hobbit?
That's a good question. I first discovered it through other books. So I began to read Homer's The Odyssey, and I saw that as Odysseus was making his way back to the land of Ithaca, his homeland, there were different stopping points along the journey, and each of these stopping points had characters that either were helpful or they weren't. And as I thought about it more, I realized, this is hospitality. And I also had taken a class on the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the professor had talked about the theme of hospitality before, and how this was, very important in Greek culture, and which I also think we see the same the importance on hospitality even in the scriptures. I think that hospitality is a theme that we see in every good story, whether that be Shakespeare's Macbeth, when Macbeth kills King Duncan in his home. It shows that Macbeth was not a very hospitable character. We see this in Lewis's Narnia series. When the children get into the land of Narnia, the beavers, right, they show hospitality, whereas the White Witch is not very hospitable. But we also see this in stories such as Hansel and Gretel, where the children are lost in the woods and they come to the witch's house, and yet she tries to eat them. This theme is seen in every good story, and so yeah, that's kind of how I discovered the theme in The Hobbit, was really seeing it in many other places first.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I did have a question concerning your research in the book itself. Do you think that hospitality is a major or minor theme in The Hobbit?
That's another really good question. I would say that it is a major theme, for sure. Hospitality almost acts as a sort of hinge, but multiple hinges throughout the story. It sort of ushers the story along. As you read the book, there are these moments, these pauses, these breaks, where the story comes to almost like a standstill, where they're in this one central location and it's based on hospitality. For instance, the trolls. They also try to eat the dwarves, but then this ushers us right on along to the elves in Rivendell, who replenish their needs and give them the sustenance they need to continue their journey. And that pushes us along to the goblins in the mountain, under the mountain, who also strip them of all their weapons, take all their things away, and so they're in need of someone to be hospitable to them. And so they find their way to Beorn, who again replenishes them, helps them. Then they find their way to the elves in Mirkwood, who take all their things away, put them in jail, but then they're able to escape, and this pushes us along to, we need someone to help us. Again, hospitality, and they find themselves in Lake Town, where the men and women there give them weapons, give them food, and send them off to their to the conclusion of the story, which is the battle for their home again. So I would say that hospitality is a major theme in the story, because it acts as a hinge for every scene coming along, and it ushers the story to its conclusion.
Okay, thank you. And last question, you mentioned in your speech that God cares about hospitality.
Yeah.
Would you be able to provide an example of this?
Yeah, of course. I think that we see this in the scriptures most pointedly with Christ himself. Take in the beginning of the Gospels, he's born as a baby, the incarnate. And where is he born? He's born in a manger. But why? Well, it said that there was no room in the inn. If these people had known who he was, they might have shown better hospitality. I mean, they showed hospitality by giving them somewhere to sleep and for Mary to give birth to Jesus, but nonetheless, it was a manger. I think we see this further during his ministry. There's a moment where he says, you know, the birds of the air have nests and the foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And so we see that the very world in which the Son of God, Jesus Christ, that world that he created, did not show him hospitality. In fact, it hated him. It rejected him to the point of murdering him. And so I think that God most certainly is concerned with hospitality, and yet hospitality was distorted, it was ruined and corrupted by sin. And so that's one of the redeeming qualities of a Christian, is that they're to be hospitable people. In fact, God cares so much about this that he commands and requires that those who would be elders in the church, those who would be the leaders of the church, must themselves be men of hospitality, known for their hospitality, willing to welcome in those who can't really repay them. And so I would say yes, I do think that God cares about hospitality, as we see that it wasn't shown to his own Son. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
of course.
That concludes our interview.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Have a great day.
You as well.